Let us offer our consecration to the Lord.
Lord, we offer up to you this day on this Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and we offer up to you all that we have, that we may come to serve you and love you. We ask that you enter into our lives and guide us to follow you in ways that lead us to be the people you call us to be, and we ask this through Christ our Lord. Well, today is in fact September 8th, and September 8th is the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary. So it's a powerful day, obviously, in the church. Now, one of the sources that I read on this, it brought something interesting. There is nothing in the Bible that tells the story that Mary was born, but obviously she was born. So we understand that. And that's an important thing to keep in mind, because not that she was born, that was pretty obvious. But if we look at the gospel reading, and the gospel reading is what is known as the genealogy from Matthew. Now, what the genealogy is, if you've heard even 3 lines of the reading, you're familiar with it. Very simple. Abraham became the father of Isaac. Isaac became the father of Jacob, ... I mean, I could read the whole thing. I will not. But it's important to understand that, because as we look at all the figures throughout the history, right up to the father of Joseph, who was the husband of Mary, this whole story is just listed in the realities of humanity. And so Mary was born, obviously, and this is the nativity of her birth, but it also brings further the real humanity in which Mary entered as, of course, being a human being. Now, why that's important? Well, we also have to look at the time. Granted, we know this takes place in Judah. We know that Judah was a community, a country that was Jewish. Hence, the term the term Jewish comes from Judah, and so we know all that. So they were these monotheists who believed, and still are, who believe strongly in everything we believe about God, and then we believe more in the fact of the Trinity and Jesus, the Son of God, and everything else. But obviously our faiths are connected. But remember, even though we understand that Matthew was written to Jews to help us to understand the whole genealogy and the history and how Jesus is connected to the history and everything else, we also have to understand that this message was also preached to the Gentiles. And the Gentiles came from a pagan background, so they were obviously still believing in the gods. And we want to understand that reality, because none of the gods were human. Or if you do find, I think there may have been one who became God or something like that, a god. But none of the gods were actually on the level of human, even as they were gods. So we have to understand that in pagan mythology. So all of the gods were the highest level of nature. That's something that we don't believe about our own God, because we believe our God is supernatural. That means that we believe God is above nature. Now, what we actually believe is God is immanent and transcendent. He is above nature, but he's also within to the most intimate levels of our lives. So he's immanent, and so he's transcendent, and he's immanent. Remember, none of these ideas were part of the pagan world. So if you even took the greatest gods in the ancient Greek world was Zeus. Zeus was the, how would you call it? He was maybe the most senior, I guess you could put it that way, of all the gods, but he was still part of nature within the context of the Greeks, because they didn't understand anything that was beyond all that. This is an important distinction. So when we bring Mary in, and she is born, obviously, but we understand that she is fully a human. She is not divine. She's fully human. We bring a human reality which did not exist within Greek mythology or Roman mythology. If we look at it this way, we can understand that there is this level of nature. There are the plants and then the animals. Maybe we can even go all the way back. We can go the single-celled animals, and then we can work our ways up through the plants and the animals and the humans. Well, in Greek mythology and Roman mythology and others, there was another level of nature, and that was the gods. But they were all part of nature. So they weren't supernatural. As a matter of fact, where did the gods live? They lived on Mount Olympus. That was the idea from Greek mythology, that they lived on Mount Olympus. So they were a higher level of nature. So even they weren't officially human, they were still part of this reality that we see within the whole plant and animal kingdom. Even though people may not describe it as, well, those are the gods, they're different. Yes, we can understand, but they're all within the context of nature. So we see it this way. When we understand that Mary is born and we see the genealogy, we understand that's a completely different concept of where the Lord is going to lead us in understanding who he is. We're going to talk more on the other side of the break. You're listening to the St. Anthony Overnight from St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, right here on WEZE. We'll be right back right after this.
I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com.
And don't forget our own website, CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can check out our website. You can check out the Substack newsletter. That's getting more and more popular. As a matter of fact, one of the things I've been doing is I've been tweeting out the program. And although Twitter has been doing okay for a while, the numbers are dropping intensely over Twitter, but they're growing over at Substack. So that's a good thing. Even people who don't subscribe, we have just a lot of viewers over on Substack. And we're seeing more viewers over at CatholicAudiomedia.com. So that's happening. So anyway, fascinating. And one of the things I'm doing is I'm tweeting out. No, I'm not tweeting out. I'm putting on Substack my homily a few days earlier, and if anyone wants to make any comments, they're welcome to, and everything else. And then that's the homily I deliver on Sundays, but obviously I make corrections to it because I have the first draft. There is an old quote that I live by, which is, it affects the way I write, and it affects obviously the way I edit, and I won't make the quote exact because this is a Christian radio station, but it's from Ernest Hemingway. And Ernest Hemingway said, the first draft of anything is, and then that would be beeped out if I were to say the word. But you can have a general idea. That's as Ernest Hemingway used to say. So that is an understanding to look at when you look at my own, but you can do that over at Substack. So anyway, we're talking about the Nativity of Mary and how important it is to understand not only the birth of Jesus, but the birth of Mary. And again, Mary's fully human, so obviously she was born. You're not going to see anywhere in the Bible that the Nativity of Mary. And people will say, as I said, well, how do you know what happened? Well, yeah, how do you know your birth happened? It's the same way. We know Mary is in the Bible. So we understand that whole concept. But that brings everything into a level that was not seen within the pagan world ever. And because, as again, all the gods were a higher level of nature. We understand that God is, and this is something that a lot of the atheists don't get, because they understand the pagan concept of God. So, for example, they will describe God as the old man in the sky. And they say, well, I'm not going to believe in the old man in the sky, or I'm not going to believe in the invisible friend in the sky. Well, what does that mean? That means you have a concept within the ancient pagan understanding of who God is when you use those terms. But God is immanent and transcendent. The Jews have this very powerful tradition I've talked to you about before of not mentioning God's name. And if you can tell, you're looking at a Jewish writer if they write G-D. Because God is so much more than us, we don't even say his name. He is so ultimately holy, we don't even say his name. We don't even write his name. That's the Jewish concept. That's not the Christian concept. Well, when we understand a concept of God within the pagan rituals, the pagan realities, they don't have that powerful understanding of God because, again, he's within nature. But for us, so we understand this concept that we call, you have to understand where I'm going with this when I say this concept. I'm not denigrating the idea of God. But we have to understand the concept that we have in our mind of who God is, but God is even more than that. He is beyond all that. We have this understanding of God in our mind to help us to relate to God, but God is much bigger than that. So when we have this human factor with Mary being born in the Nativity, and of course Jesus on Christmas, we see this reality of something that is beyond anything the pagans ever understood about God. We'll talk more tomorrow on Friday. Have yourself a blessed day. If you would like to support our program, please consider a donation to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. There are several ways to consider this. One is to purchase any of our merchandise, which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. There are coffee mugs there. There's also my latest book, Encounter Christ in Your Humanity, all of which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also donate to the show directly through either the Donate tab, also at CatholicAudiomedia.com, or by sending a donation through the U.S. Postal Service with your questions and comments at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. That's St. Anthony Parish, 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. Finally, the best way you can support our parish is to attend Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock and be a part of our parish. We thank you for any support you would like to give to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, the sponsoring parish for this media outreach to Catholics and other Christians in the WROL, WEZE, and podcast listening audience. In Cristo vivimos.